Tastes like hopes and dreams. Okay, welcome to the show. This is the Pleb Life podcast. I am Chris, and I want to welcome everybody. This is the first episode of the podcast, and right now it's just a podcast in name. It's more going to be more like a video blog until we get a little bit of momentum going. I do intend to broadcast this on a podcast network, so I guess by that definition, we can go ahead and call it that. And it sounds a little better, Pleb Life podcast instead of the Pleb Life video blog. That term's out of date anyway. So, hey, moving forward. That's the theme of the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Move forward. Why Pleb Life, you might ask? Well, that's going to be the life that I live. I'm going to be giving you my perspective on current events, news, and politics. I'm tempted to add sports in the mix. However, I really don't give two squirts about team sports. I like the camaraderie. I like going to a live game, whether it's baseball, hockey game is pretty fun to be at too. But sitting around at home watching people playing games, dressing up in brightly colored clothing, it's not really my thing. Uh, Anyway, but why pleb life? Why the name pleb life? What is a pleb, you might ask? Well, let's see. So the Pleb Life podcast is going to be a common man's perspective. Like I said, news, current events, and politics. Politics is my sport. It's something that I enjoy to watch. Red versus blue. It's kind of hysterical at times. Not only watching the people who participate, but watching all of the common men, all of the equestrian, the middle class. Boy, they take their politics seriously. I'll tell you what. But anyway, a pleb. Pleb's going to be short for plebeian. I'm not sure where the emphasis on that word goes, but it historically refers to a member of the lower social class in ancient Rome. In modern usage, it means ordinary person. You know, pleb, for the purpose of this show, is just going to be a regular person of the lower class, of the lower income class. Now, not to say that plebs don't have class. Most plebs I know have much, much more class than wealthy people. However, the purpose of this definition, class would mean financial status. Who were the plebs, you might ask? In any given community, the plebs are going to make up most of your labor force. They were the commoners of ancient Rome and of modern Rome as well. They make up the majority of the population, the labor force. They make up the majority of the military service, minus officers and generals. They're the cannon fodder that gets sent in first. Those that survive and actually prove themselves useful may make the ranks. They may climb the ranks after they've survived and watched all their friends die. And the economic contribution that plebeians usually make is the labor force. They make up the labor. They do all of the heavy lifting. Their political struggles not initially, still to this day, they're excluded from political power for the most part. It says here they fought and gradually gained political rights through the conflict of the orders. I guess that's something pertaining to ancient Rome. But however, there are power structures on top of power structures that serve to counter anything that the plebs vote for. There's a thing called delegates, and then super delegates, and special elections, and all sorts of uh, systems that will counter the plebeian vote. Their cultural participation is basically everything: religion, cultural events, contributing to the social fabric of any given society. They make up the bulk of the fans that are out there in the stands. They make up the bulk of the pulpit, I guess. Despite their essential contributions, plebeians often face social and political challenges. I say, leading to ongoing struggles for equality and repression, representation. Representation. There's a word for you, huh? Hollywood's adopted that for some reason. And here we go. So I've asked AI to go ahead and give me some images, and it did not disappoint. Let's see if we can get a closer look. Uh, let's, there we go. So this is AI's depiction of modern day plebs versus Roman plebs. I don't think that this is what Roman plebs particularly look like. They have very white teeth, clean cut. Everything's clean. Um, hey, you know what? I don't know. Rome was very modern for its time. You never know. But these people here, these are not representative of the working class or the labor force, at least. I live in Central California, where labor is labor, farm labor, manufacturing, warehousing, logistics. These people don't look like they work in any of those fields. But hey, I didn't have to draw this picture, so
So, poor, according to this definition, is lacking sufficient money to cover basic needs such as food and shelter.
I would agree.
Yes. So, from a census standpoint in the United States, poverty is measured by comparing a person's income or a family's income to a set poverty threshold. That's a minimum amount of income needed to cover that individual's basic needs. So, the current poverty threshold for a household of one in America is $14,580. A family of four, it's about $30,000. So, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, they estimate in 2021, 37.9 million Americans live in poverty.
Wow.
Which translates to about 11.6% of the population.
So there you have it. The working class. There's lines. There's lines of income that you have to cross to be able to cross in order to be considered of a higher class. Okay, but there you have it. There's going to be our synopsis for the show. Let's move on to something of substance. So there's no way to avoid it. Last night we had the State of the Union address that wasn't called the State of the Union address for some reason. And I really don't want to go too deep into that, my very first episode, but I will say there are some things that I noticed right off the bat that were kind of confusing. And I'm going to go ahead and try and point that out here with some visuals. So the first thing I wanted to address, and this is about the only thing I want to address on this topic, because it's a real hot topic, but just the initial uh, reporting of this speech that was coming out, I was very confused as it was being reported as a address to Congress, give speech to Congress. That's strange. What, this is just something special going on? Is something different going on? Because normally around this time of year, this the State of the Union address. Every president gives it around the same times, typically in February, as far as I remember. But we're close enough to that date. What's going on? Well, it turns out that it is a State of the Union address, but just they don't want to call it that because of the big meanie orange guy. And just to give you some frame of reference, so they've got their reasons, right? Let's see. Here we go. I have no producer, ladies and gentlemen. It's just me on my own. So I've got to do the task of several different people. I honestly don't know how many people it takes to run a successful podcast, but I believe we'll find out here sooner or later. Okay, there's something that I wanted to point out to you guys. The difference between, or this is something that I noticed right off the bat. So here we go. So each of these, like the local news has nothing in terms of news. You can go to opinion. And they've got a lot of opinion pieces, or they've got at least one. Okay, so AOL USA. Today, Donald Trump gives a speech to Congress, but don't call it a State of the Union address. Don't you dare call it that. It won't be called that. And why? Why won't it be called that? AOL or USA Today. Well, the State of the Union address is an annual speech given by the President to Congress at the start of most calendar years, providing information on the current status and conditions of the United States. Typically is delivered to a joint session of Congress inside the House of Representatives chamber. Well, isn't that what's happening tonight or last night? Why isn't Trump's address called the State of the Union? The Republican president's speech will not be an official State of the Union address because he was sworn into office less than 2 months ago. So that's strange. He's still the president giving us a speech about the current state of our union, is he not? So I thought, wow, I wonder what it's been called before. I guess 81, Reagan had a different name for it. Bush and Clinton both gave administrative goal speeches. But if I look back to the last guy, State of the Union transcript, State of the Union, 2021, State of the Union, President Joe Biden delivers first State of the Union, State of he was sworn in 2 months before this State of the Union, and they had no problems calling it that. Oh, well, here it is, joint dress. Oh, I guess there are some, but for the most part, AP, same news organization, or well, I guess it's USA Today is what I'm reading now. Either way, last president got speech named State of the Union despite not having any, I wouldn't say experience, but despite only being the president for 2 months, State of the Union. But it's just weird. See, this double standard, this is one of the reasons why so many people have just started s- ignoring mainstream media. Just the whole difference of position that the news takes from one person to the next. It's insane. And then you get that, why don't you believe the news? Why don't you trust the people on the news? Well, because of shit like this. Let's see. That's going to be enough about that. And I just had to address that. That was the biggest thing going on last night. Let's see what else. What else we have here in my formerly nicotine stained fingers. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was just moving forward, guys. That's what the initial theme of this channel was going to be about, and I've decided to just keep on moving forward, keep on with that theme. We're going to call it. So this is now going to be the Pleb Life channel, and we're going to be. I'm going to try and do this on a regular basis. I have other channels. Might want to check it out. Not without my TV. It's a reaction channel. That, that for some reason, it just I get views one day and no views the next day, and it's just a big old roller coaster. That algorithm is giving it to me. I'll tell you what. This next little short video says a lot about how I think in the current state of politics. So for those of you who are listening, this is just a real quick 15-second snippet of a TikTok about someone's opinion on how politicians should be paid.
Just me, but I don't see any valid reason for why politicians shouldn't be making the average paycheck of the people in the state that they're representing. Like that. That's how quick things would morph into something better in the United States if the people that we elect to represent us actually had to live the way that we have to live.
That's something that I've always thought about since I was younger. I remember hearing about how Catholic priests have to take a vow of poverty or something then I don't understand why politicians don't have to do the same thing. Y- You know, I feel like representatives from, and not even federal, not just federal, all politicians, local especially, representatives from certain districts who don't live in that district should not be representatives. You know, I feel like, yeah, I agree with her. You should be paid the medium income of the people you represent. You should also live in the same conditions. You know, hell, I wouldn't be opposed to having the president move into public housing. All senators should move into public housing. State, local, everybody who asks for money for you to vote for them, for you to give them, voluntarily give them power over your own lives, should have to live the same type of life that you live. Or at least that's my opinion. Let me know down in the comments below if that's something you agree with, disagree with. Let's start a conversation about this. This could be another topic on a for future episode. I like the fact that, if it's true, how the current president is not accepting pay. I think it's, how do I put it? I think it's just a gesture. Um, However, it is the first time I can remember any president even making that gesture, whether it's in too little, too late or not. He's still the only one who's done that so far. So yeah, he's still the only one that's yeah, he's still the only one that's done that so far. Not even local politicians in their communities. They don't even do like publicity stunts like, "Oh, I'm going to go stay at this project for a full month and see what I can do to improve the conditions of the people that live." There is nothing like that happening. I just don't understand. It's 2024. All the movies that I grew up watching, anything that was anything had anything to do with politics or social unrest or social injustice, always had to do with the little guy taking on the big government, whether it was the U.S. government. I remember V for Vendetta was, I think that was about Europeans. Um, Even all our stories of the past are people rising up against a tyrannical government, right? So now, and I've always thought, why is it always the poor people that have to rise up? Why isn't there one of the rich people or part of the oppressive class or oppressing class say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this? Like not one person from the upper class has ever done that. This And now that it seems that way, now that it almost kind of seems like there's a millionaire out there who is, or a billionaire who is at least pretending to take on these massive uh, deep state systems and institutions. You guys are mad at him. You guys are now the population is defending big pharma. They're defending big oil. it, it blows my mind. The last 4 years, I've seen both sides, left and right, take on each other's causes and completely reject participation from the other. Back in 2015, 2016, I guess the legalize the green movement, marijuana, to legalize it in all 50 states. Well, they couldn't get that federal uh, backing, but they were able to, and when I say they, I mean the people who were campaigning for legalization. They were able to get it to where that decision was kicked back to each state. Each individual state was able to decide whether or not they wanted to legalize it, and that was considered a win, a big win, a huge win for states' rights, for the green community, the people who wanted, for libertarians especially, because I think that's kind of their one of their creeds or one of their mottos. Each community should be able to decide how they want to govern within themselves without outside influence. I think that's one of the staples of libertarianism. If not, go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below. But if if that was considered a plus, a big win, huge win, like that was historical, right? So that was a historical win for the left. And the right, religious right especially, was like, oh my gosh, they gained they gained so much ground. What do we have to, fortify our own communities? And when that happened, I think when like green states, Colorado, California, Washington made they went green in terms of the legalization. Other states like Florida, the red states, the ones with the really strong, like the Bible Belt states, kind of doubled down on their laws. They started like really uh, coming down on marijuana use. So it was very strange to see the turn, and what I mean by that is like now the abortion issue has taken the same route, right? It's been kicked off the federal plate, and given back. That decision has been given back to the states. Each community is now required to decide on their own whether they want to have that law in place or what type of laws regarding that topic. But now, the same group who considered that a win before 4 years ago or 5 years, whenever that took place, is now seeing that same thing as a loss. Right? It's flipped. Right? And not only that, but I heard for a long time, like if you want to make change, real change comes at the local level. Local grassroots level is where you can make real substantial change. Change made on the federal level is convoluted. It's ambiguous. It gets all mushed up when it gets down to the ground level within each community. The federal laws usually are so like blanketed that they a lot of times end up creating more problems than they solve. Versus local community laws uh, tend to address just that, the people within a certain city limit or county limit or state limit. And that typically, prior to 2017, 2018, that was considered a win. To get something taken out of the federal level and put back into state level was always considered a win for the people. But now everything's turned upside down. It blows my mind to see that people are upset that they've been given more power to decide for themselves. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about that. And I'm just using abortion and legalization as examples of the flip flop. There are many others. I don't really want to get into an abortion debate. Uh, However, more comments the better. So go ahead, bring it on. And with that said, I'm going to lead into my next topic, which is the crab mentality versus lobster mentality, guys. The lobsters. Be like a lobster, right? So if you don't know the crab mentality, that is basically you can put a crab, one crab in a bucket, and it's more than capable of escaping just about anything you put it in within reason. Like you put it in a simple bucket, put it there, it's probably going to escape sooner or later. It'll figure out how. But if you put more than one crab in a bucket, two crabs, or a handful of them, say four or five, in any container, what's going to happen is every time one reaches up to the top, another one's going to grab it and pull it back down. That's just what they do. I'm not sure if there's any scientific explanation. I didn't read that much into it. However, that is what's known as the crab mentality, and human beings tend to take on those traits. Uh, uh, the plebs, particularly, have this crab mentality of who do you think you are trying to live a better life, and they typically, well, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they sabotage each other. Right? And so, what I want to suggest is that we adopt what I call the lobster mentality. And I got this idea from a friend of mine, an old friend of mine named Oscar. Rest in peace, by the way. He's no longer with us, but he left behind the nuggets of wisdom, right? So this guy told me a story about lobsters versus crabs, right? And he brought it up because I had told him that he was one of the few Spanish speaking Mexicans that didn't give me a hard time for not speaking Spanish, because I am of, I guess my grandparents are from Mexico. And so, because of that, whenever I speak, I go around the Mexican culture, whenever I'm around people who speak Spanish, quite often given a hard time because I don't speak Spanish. I've never been to Mexico. My parents don't speak Spanish. So I'm quite often faced with the, what's wrong with you? Why don't you speak Spanish? Well, he was one of the few people who didn't give me that hard time. And one night when I had brought it up, he said, that's because that's what crabs think. You want to think like a lobster. And he began to tell me about how if you put crabs in a bucket, they'll pull each other down. But if you put lobsters in a bucket, you have to secure the bucket. Whatever you put them in, you have to secure it, because not only are they smart enough to figure out how to get out, but they're not going to just leave the others behind. They'll form a little lobster ladder, and everybody gets out. No lobster left behind is the story, is the, you know, was the, I think the gist of the story he was telling me. And he went on to say, we need to become lobsters. That crab mentality is just keeping us all behind. And we'll never get ahead unless we help each other. And I gotta say, guys, I think that that's one of the realest things I ever heard. Stop pulling each other back. You have more in common with your neighbor than you do with that millionaire on TV who's telling you to hate your neighbor. Make no mistake about it. If anybody is on late night TV or network news, they're not a pleb. They're not of the lower financial class or even of the middle financial class. Like, don't stop listening to these people on TV who are telling you to hate your neighbor. Be a lobster. Help your neighbor.
You get one life, and out that one life, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it, and never being okay with where you are. Yeah. Because after every level is another level, whether you realize it or not.
There's a little nugget of wisdom for you. I'm not really a fan of this guy's work. However, it's hard to deny truth when you hear it, whoever it's coming from. That's some real shit he was talking right there. Don't get too comfortable in life. Don't get stagnant. Move forward. Whenever we become stagnant, we start to become resentful towards others without even realizing it most times. And it just makes life harder for yourself. Even if you're at the end of your, maybe you're starting your last chapter or what you believe to be, pick up a hobby, reconnect with some old friends, However, if you're still young enough to live, then by all means live. Move forward.
If you aim low enough. One of the things
Why do you see that? That's another thing you keep saying. Aim low enough. Have a low enough bar. Why do you mean that?
Well, let's say you've got a kid and you want the kid to improve. You don't set them a bar that's so high that it's impossible for them to attain it. You take a look at the kid and you think, okay, this kid's got this range of skill. Here's a challenge we can throw at him or her that exceeds their current level of skill, but gives them a reasonable probability of success. And so, like I'm saying it tongue in cheek to some degree, you know, it's like, but I'm doing it as an aid to humility. It's like, well, I don't know how to start improving my life. Someone might say that. And I would say, well, you're not aiming low enough. There's something you could do that you are regarding as trivial that you could do, that you would do, that would result in an actual improvement. But it's not a big enough improvement for you. So you won't lower yourself enough to take the opportunity.
Incremental steps.
Now that's something that comes up regularly in my life. What he was talking about right there at the end, that was Dr. Jordan Peterson, by the way, for those of you listening. For those of you who live in Rio Linda, he is a clinical psychologist from Canada who became controversial because of his position on the whole DEI, um, what is it, pronouns, dead name issue. I believe he lost his tenureship over it as well. And but as controversial as he may be, he does make some very good points, especially that one at the end about self improvement, aiming low, and people not doing things that they believe are beneath them that would help so tremendously. Like or reading. Okay, let's just put reading, right? A lot of I don't read. Oh, I don't read, right? But then at the same time, those same people have problems with those same people can't put together a desk. Well, it's probably because you didn't read the instructions or you don't read. If you just lowered your standards a little bit and did the thing that you don't look forward to doing, or where he says like you could do something trivial, something as trivial as planning ahead, but nah, I don't do that. You believe that's beneath you. Only nerds plan ahead. Planning ahead, don't let tomorrow be not letting tomorrow be a surprise is one of the most productive things anybody can do for themselves. Okay, I don't make lunch for myself. That's nah. You're gonna get hungry tomorrow, and it's likely that you're gonna be surprised by it for some reason, and you'll have to spend money that either you don't have or you shouldn't be spending. Instead of just breaking down, spending 10 minutes the night before making your lunch. But for whatever reason, you don't do that. I think that's what he's talking about. Simple changes can make just extraordinarily large differences in our lives. I believe he goes on to talk about how we should care for ourselves as if we were caring for others. And I tend to take care of other people way, way better than I do myself. So that's something else, another point to keep in mind. Let's see, what else do we have up here? Anything else that I haven't touched on so far? I believe that's going to be it for the day, for this episode. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to, if you get a chance, check out my other channel. It's a reaction channel called Not Without My TV on YouTube. And of course, I'd like to mention our sponsor, which is also me, a website called centralcitypm.com. That's centralcitypm.com, and the PM is for project management. It's soon to be for short stories. Currently, there is a online shop. You can buy some T-shirts, baseball cap, There's a couple of other items on there that you might want to check out at centralcitypm.com. I also want to give a big shout out to my #1 fans, which are my sister and my mother. You guys have been keeping my views a little bit higher than they should be, or than they actually are, and I really appreciate that. Thanks again, everybody, for watching or listening. If you're listening to me on Spotify, it's also brought to you and powered by StreamYard. Now, they are not a direct sponsor. However, without them, you can see right there, without them, I wouldn't be able to have this format. So thank you, StreamYard. And once this becomes monetized, once this becomes monetized, we can get rid of that up there. See that watermark? So all of those haters out there that are saying he's not even using the real program. Well, no, I'm not, because I'm poor. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you next time.
Not without my TV. No, but seriously, bring the TV.